This is an upscale center, not a place to put on shows with raggedy old clothes. A group of people pointed and laughed at the faded uniform of an elderly man. Standing at the entrance, nobody defended him. Nobody asked why he wore it. But seconds later, a black SUV stopped. A general stepped out. That's a dress uniform of honor. Who was laughing? Welcome to Talestrength, where gratitude is never too late. Meet Raymond Ellis, 82 years old, stooped shoulders, silver hair, but eyes that still held the discipline of a lifetime soldier. Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis, who served in the Korean War and later as a technical advisor in Guam. Raymond lived alone in Santa Clara, California. Every year on November 6th, he performed the same ritual. He would put on his old military uniform and drive to West Point Plaza Shopping Center to buy a single bouquet of flowers in memory of his younger brother, who never came home from war. The uniform was old, faded from olive green to pale gray. The shoulder patches were frayed, the brass buttons tarnished, but pinned to his chest, still gleaming, was his bronze star medal, the only decoration he'd never let tarnish. On this particular November morning, Raymond parked his beat-up Honda Civic and slowly stepped out at the plaza entrance. His movements were careful, deliberate. Every step carried the weight of decades and memories. That's when he caught their attention. 3 young men in designer clothes were hanging around the entrance, probably waiting for friends. They spotted Raymond's uniform immediately, and their expressions shifted from boredom to amusement. "Check it out," one of them said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like he borrowed that from a costume shop." The second one pulled out his phone. Already recording. "Never seen cosplay like this in real life." The third one snickered. "Dudes, probably going to ask for a military discount on everything." A woman walking past covered her mouth to hide her laughter. "He's probably pretending he was in the army to get sympathy discounts." Raymond stood perfectly still. His face showed no reaction, but his hand tightened slightly around the small bouquet of white lilies he carried. These flowers weren't for show or sympathy. They were for Tommy, his little brother, who died at 19 in a foxhole half a world away. More people began to notice the commotion. Instead of defending an elderly man, they joined the silent audience, some smiling at what they assumed was an old man's desperate attempt at attention. That's when the security guard approached, young, probably fresh out of high school, wearing a uniform that looked more official than Raymond's faded military dress. "Sir," the guard said, speaking quietly but loud enough for the crowd to hear, "I'm going to have to ask you to reconsider your outfit choice. It might cause misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? Raymond's voice was calm, steady. "Well, you know, people might think you're trying to get special treatment or something. Maybe come back in regular clothes." The 3 young men exchanged glances and barely contained their laughter. One of them was still recording, probably planning to post this crazy old man encounter on social media later. A middle-aged couple walking by shook their heads in disapproval. The husband muttered to his wife, "These stolen valor cases are getting out of hand." Nobody asked Raymond about his service. Nobody inquired about the bronze star on his chest. Nobody wondered why an 82-year-old man would put on a military uniform just to buy flowers at a shopping center. They just assumed the worst and found it entertaining. Raymond looked around at the faces surrounding him, some amused, some disapproving, some just indifferent, but none showing even basic respect for an elderly man who'd clearly served his country. "I'm just here to buy flowers," Raymond said quietly. "Then I'll be on my way." The security guard shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I'm not trying to cause problems, but management has policies about disruptions." "I understand," Raymond replied. He'd faced much worse than embarrassment. In Korea, he'd faced enemy fire. In Guam, he'd faced bureaucrats and politicians who'd never worn a uniform. A few young people laughing at his faded uniform was hardly the worst thing he'd endured, but it hurt differently. This wasn't enemy fire or political opposition. This was his own countrymen, the people he'd sworn to protect, treating him like a fraud and a joke. What Raymond didn't notice was the black SUV that had just pulled into the parking lot. The driver had been watching the entire scene unfold. From a distance, his knuckles were white against the steering wheel, and his jaw was clenched with barely controlled anger. General Curtis Grant, current commander of West Coast Reserve Forces, had recognized Raymond Ellis immediately, and he was about to remind everyone present what real honor looked like. The video hit TikTok that same evening. 37 seconds of carefully edited footage showing Raymond being escorted away by security. Looking confused and defeated, the caption read, "Old man pretending to be a soldier for attention at shopping mall." The video went viral overnight. 15,000 views, 847 shares, 312 comments. And every single one was brutal. If that uniform was real, why is it so faded? Acting skills on point, though. Look how sad he looks. This is why I don't trust random people in military uniforms. Stolen valor much. Real veterans don't dress up for shopping trips. Someone should report him to the authorities for impersonating military personnel. By morning, Raymond's quiet life had been turned upside down. His phone started ringing at 6 a.m. The first call was from Mrs. Henderson, president of the neighborhood association, where he'd lived peacefully for 12 years. "Raymond, honey, I'm getting calls about some video online. People are saying well, they're questioning whether you really served." "What video?" Raymond asked, though his heart was already sinking. "It's all over social media. Look, I've known you for years, but maybe you should clear this up publicly before it gets worse." The second call came from the manager at Tony's flower shop, where Raymond had bought his memorial flowers every November 6th for the past decade. "Mr. Ellis, I'm sorry, but corporate policy says we can't serve anyone under investigation for stolen valor. It's nothing personal, but we can't risk the negative publicity." "Under investigation?" Raymond's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Tony, you've known me for 10 years. I've shown you my discharge papers, my service photos. I know, but this video has people upset. Maybe come back when this blows over." The third call was the most painful. It came from Harold Martinez, a fellow Korean War veteran and Raymond's closest friend for over 20 years. "Ray, I hate to ask this, but some of the guys at the VFW are asking questions. Do you have your DD-1 for discharge papers handy? People want to see proof of your service record." "Harold, we served together. You were there when I got my Bronze Star. You were at Tommy's funeral when they gave me his Purple Heart." "I know, Ray, but you know how it is these days. People are suspicious of everyone. Maybe it's better if you don't come to the Veterans Day ceremony this weekend, just until this dies down." By noon, Raymond had received 43 phone calls and dozens of text messages. Neighbors who'd waved to him for years now crossed the street to avoid conversation. The grocery store cashier, who'd known him by name for a decade, suddenly couldn't make eye contact. At the post office where Raymond went to mail a letter to his late brother's widow, the clerk looked at him with obvious suspicion. "Are you the guy from that video? The one pretending to be military?" "I'm not pretending anything," Raymond said quietly. "I'm just trying to mail a letter." "Well, we don't give military discounts to fake veterans. I didn't ask for a discount. I just want to buy a stamp." But the damage was done. Everyone in line was staring at him now, whispering to each other about the stolen valor case they'd seen online. Raymond left without mailing his letter. That afternoon, he received an official letter from the Santa Clara County Veterans Affairs office. His benefits were being temporarily suspended, pending investigation of service record authenticity due to multiple civilian complaints. The investigation could take weeks or months. In the meantime, his monthly disability payments for the back injury he'd sustained in Korea would be stopped. His prescription benefits at the VA hospital were suspended. Even his access to the veterans cemetery where his brother was buried was restricted. 40 years of documented military service erased by a 37-second TikTok video. Raymond sat in his small living room that evening, surrounded by boxes of military memorabilia he'd collected over the decades. His discharge papers, commendation letters, photographs of his unit in Korea, letters from grateful families of soldiers he'd helped save. None of it mattered to the court of public opinion. His landline rang again. This time it was a reporter from the local news station. "Mr. Ellis, I'm calling about the allegations of stolen valor." Would you like to comment on the video that's been circulating? What would you like me to say? Raymond asked. Well, are you really a veteran? Can you prove your military service? Raymond looked at the bronze star sitting on his coffee table, the medal he'd earned for pulling 3 wounded soldiers to safety under enemy fire in 1953. I shouldn't have to prove anything to anyone, he said and hung up. But outside his house, parked across the street in the same black SUV from the shopping center, General Curtis Grant was making phone calls of his own. He'd spent the day pulling files, making inquiries, and confirming what he already knew in his heart. Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis was no fake. He was a decorated combat veteran whose service record was impeccable. More than that, he was the man who'd saved Grant's life 30 years ago during a helicopter crash in Guam. Grant had been a young lieutenant then, barely 25 years old, when their transport chopper went down during a training exercise. Ellis had pulled him and 4 other soldiers from the wreckage before it exploded. Now, the man who'd saved his life was being called a fraud by people who'd probably never served a day. In uniform themselves, Grant made one final phone call that evening. This is General Grant. I need you to prepare a full service verification for Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis, retired, and I need it ready by tomorrow morning. We're going to set the record straight. Swing. 1 week later, Raymond returned to West Point Plaza. He didn't want to go back, but he had no choice. The post office inside the plaza was the only one in his area, and he desperately needed to mail his rent check. Before eviction proceedings began, his suspended VA benefits had left him unable to pay bills on time. This time he wore civilian clothes, a simple gray sweater and khaki pants. He'd learned his lesson about wearing his uniform in public, but fate had other plans. As Raymond approached the plaza entrance, he spotted the same 3 young men from the week before. They were lounging near the entrance again, probably waiting for the Apple store to open. One of them recognized him immediately. Oh my God, it's the fake soldier guy from TikTok. The second one pulled out his phone, already recording. This is going to be even better content. The lying old man returns. The third one stepped closer, emboldened by their viral success. What's your angle this time, old man? Going to pretend to be a veteran again? A small crowd began to gather. Some recognized Raymond from the video that had made him locally infamous. Others were just curious about the commotion. The same security guard from before approached, shaking his head with obvious annoyance. Sir, I told you last week not to cause disruptions here. Do I need to call the police? I'm just trying to mail a letter. Raymond said quietly. I'm not wearing the uniform. I'm not bothering anyone. You're bothering everyone just by being here, one of the young men called out. Nobody wants fake veterans in their neighborhood. That's when a woman in the crowd spoke up. Isn't this the guy who was exposed for stolen valor? I saw the video. He was pretending to be a war hero. Disgusting. Another voice added, my grandfather actually served in Korea. This guy's an insult to real veterans. Raymond stood in the center of the growing crowd, surrounded by accusation and hostility. He'd faced enemy soldiers in Korea who treated him with more respect than his own countrymen were showing him now. He was about to turn around and leave when the sound cut through the morning air like thunder. The screech of tires, the roar of a powerful engine. Every head in the plaza turned as a black military SUV came racing into the parking lot. At high speed, its emergency lights flashing, the vehicle slammed to a halt directly in front of the plaza entrance, blocking traffic and commanding everyone's immediate attention. The driver's door opened, and out stepped General Curtis Grant in full dress uniform. For stars gleamed on his shoulders, ribbons covered his chest, and his bearing commanded instant respect from everyone present. His voice carried the unmistakable authority of battlefield command. The man you people are harassing is Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis, United States Army, who was laughing at his service record. The entire plaza fell into stunned silence. The 3 young men who'd been so bold seconds before now looked like children caught breaking windows. General Grant walked directly to Raymond, came to attention, and rendered a crisp military salute. Staff Sergeant Ellis, it's an honor to see you again, sir. Raymond, despite his shock, returned the salute with muscle memory that hadn't faded in 40 years. Grant turned to address the crowd that had gathered to shame an old man. "This man saved my life 30 years ago during a helicopter crash in Guam. I was a young lieutenant, barely 25 years old when our transport went down. Staff Sergeant Ellis pulled me, and 4 other soldiers, from burning wreckage before it exploded." He pulled out his military tablet and activated the screen for everyone to see. "This is Raymond Ellis's official service record. Korean War veteran, Bronze Star for Valor, Purple Heart for wounds received in combat, 15 months in active combat zones. Credited with saving 17 American lives during his tour of duty." Grant showed photographs from Raymond's service file. A young Raymond in crisp military uniform standing with his unit in Korea. The resemblance to the old man in front of them was unmistakable. "The video you people shared was malicious propaganda designed to humiliate a war hero. Staff Sergeant Ellis conducts an annual memorial service for his younger brother who died in Korea at age 19. The faded uniform you mocked is 60 years old because it's real." One of the young men tried to interrupt. "We didn't know he was really. You didn't know because you didn't ask." Grant cut him off. "You saw an elderly man in a uniform and decided he was a target. For your entertainment, you filmed him, mocked him, and turned his grief into viral content for your social media accounts." Grant's voice rose so everyone in the plaza could hear him clearly. "This man earned his uniform through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. He served this country when called upon, and he's earned the right to wear that uniform with pride. Your ignorance and cruelty say nothing about his character and everything about yours." The plaza manager, who had just arrived after being alerted about the disturbance, looked mortified as he realized what had actually happened. "General, sir, we had no idea. The video made it look like he was causing problems. The video was edited to deceive," Grant replied. "And instead of showing basic respect to an elderly veteran, your staff and your customers chose to believe the worst possible interpretation." Grant pulled out his phone and made a call that everyone could hear. "This is General Grant. I need you to contact the district attorney's office about harassment charges against the individuals who filmed and distributed that video. I also need you to prepare a statement for the media about the military service record of Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis within 20 minutes. The real story was spreading faster than the original lie. Local news stations were picking up the story of the decorated Korean War veteran who'd been falsely accused of stolen valor. The 3 young men who'd started it all were facing potential charges for harassment of an elderly person and defamation of character. But more importantly, the community that had shunned Raymond was now forced to confront their own failure to show basic human decency. As the crowd began to disperse, many people approached Raymond to apologize personally. The plaza manager offered him lifetime VIP services. The flower shop owner drove to the plaza to personally deliver the memorial bouquet Raymond had been trying to buy for a week. General Grant walked with Raymond toward the post office where he finally mailed his letter to his brother's widow. "Staff Sergeant," Grant said quietly, "I owe you an apology on behalf of every American who should have known better." Raymond looked at the young general he'd once pulled from burning wreckage. "You don't owe me anything, sir. You've already paid it forward by becoming the kind of leader this country needs." Logically, Raymond Ellis declined every media interview request that followed. He turned down invitations to appear on national television, veteran advocacy programs, and local news features. Fame had never been his goal. When reporters kept calling, he simply said, "I just want to honor my brother's memory in peace." But he did agree to one small gesture that would mean more than any television appearance. A week after his vindication, Raymond returned to West Point Plaza one final time. General Grant had arranged for a simple ceremony attended only by local veterans. And the plaza management, in front of the main entrance, they installed a wooden bench with a bronze plaque that read, "Honor seat, where the uniform represents pride, not ridicule." Raymond sat on the bench for a few minutes, holding the white lilies he'd finally been able to buy for his brother Tommy. The flowers were perfect, fresh, and free of charge, a gesture from Tony's flower shop as their way of apologizing. This is enough, Raymond told General Grant. Tommy would have liked knowing people will sit here and remember that respect costs nothing. The plaza manager approached nervously, still embarrassed by how his staff had treated a decorated veteran. Mr. Ellis, we've implemented new training for all employees about recognizing and honoring military service, and we'd like to offer you a lifetime shopping discount as our way of. Raymond held up his hand gently. I don't need discounts. I just need people to treat each other with basic dignity. That's free. The 3 young men who'd started the viral video had been required by the court to perform 200 hours of community service at the local VA hospital. They were assigned to help elderly veterans with transportation, meal service, and companionship. 2 months into their service, the ringleader, Marcus, encountered Raymond at the VA medical center where he was having a routine checkup. Marcus approached hesitantly, his usual arrogance completely gone. Mr. Ellis, I wanted to apologize in person. Working here, meeting actual veterans, I had no idea what you all went through. Raymond looked at the young man who'd once called him a fake soldier. What have you learned, son? That I judged someone without knowing their story. That viral videos can destroy lives. That Marcus paused, struggling with the words. That real heroes don't look like what I expected. Raymond nodded slowly. The most important battles aren't always fought on foreign soil, Marcus. Sometimes they're fought right here in how we treat each other. The most unexpected gesture came from an 8-year-old girl named Emma, daughter of one of the plaza employees who'd witnessed Raymond's humiliation. After learning the truth about his service, Emma asked her mother to bring her to the honor bench every Saturday. She would sit quietly for a few minutes, then leave a hand-drawn picture tucked under the flowers. Her drawings showed soldiers helping each other, American flags, and always the words, "Thank you for keeping us safe." One Saturday, Raymond was there when Emma arrived. She looked up at him with wide, serious eyes. "Are you the soldier man who got hurt feelings?" "I suppose I am," Raymond replied. "My daddy says you're a hero, but people were mean to you because they didn't know." "That's right, sweetheart." Emma pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "I drew this for you. It's you and your brother in heaven, both wearing soldier clothes that aren't old anymore." Raymond looked at the crayon drawing of 2 young soldiers standing together under a bright sun, both wearing pristine uniforms with shiny medals. His eyes filled with tears for the first time since Tommy's funeral 60 years ago. 3 months later, General Grant received a handwritten letter from Raymond. It contained only 2 lines. Honor doesn't need a stage to be recognized. It just needs to not be stepped on. Grant framed that letter and placed it in the lobby of the West Coast Reserve Command headquarters next to a photograph of Raymond in his Korean War uniform. Below the display, he added an inscription that every soldier entering the building would see. "Respect is earned through service, but dignity should be given freely to all." The honor bench at West Point Plaza became a quiet gathering place for veterans and their families. Fresh flowers appear there every week, left by community members who'd learned the difference between assumption and respect. And every November 6th, an old man in a carefully pressed uniform sits there for a few minutes, holding white lilies and talking quietly to a brother who died too young in a war too far away, but whose memory lives on in the heart of a hero who never asked to be called one. Have you ever laughed at someone just because of their worn-out appearance? Have you ever stood silent while watching someone who fought for your freedom get humiliated because of a faded uniform? If you also feel that's wrong, then smash that like button and type honor so no one gets forgotten just because time has faded their uniform. Subscribe to Talestrength because we believe gratitude is never too late, as long as it comes from the heart. Remember, heroes walk among us every day, wearing the scars of service we can't always see.